episode of Chatty Broads with Becca and Jess.
Well, hello there, broads.
Hello.
We are joined by a special guest today. Listen, it is not often that we have anyone from The Bachelor on. It just doesn't ever really happen. We talk about it a lot, but this individual is here in person. I'm so excited. Elyse is here.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Oh my God, we've been talking for quite some time.
When was Colton's season? When did you film? 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
Wow.
I think
Yeah,
we were
3
the
years ago,
last
almost
season-
exactly, right?
Well, Peter, I guess, yeah, almost 3 years ago, because Peter's was the last before, the COVID
Yeah.
boring date started.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, you got one of the few beforehand. I mean, and I feel like Colton's season 2 was like, it started with Ari's. Well, no, it's I guess maybe right
Nick's.
before that, Nick's, when everything starts going in an upward trajectory. And then your season, I feel like, was the first where Instagram then became
Mix
came
was
off.
pretty big because like Corinne
Oh, yeah,
and
Corinne
like
did.
all those people were pretty big on Instagram. Yeah, and then it was art, and then it
And it
really peaked with like Pete's season.
Yeah, Pete's
Since
was
then, it's been a little downhill, but-
exploded. But I remember then looking and watching the numbers, like with Colton's season being like, oh shit, like
It was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Demi and Hannah and Kaylin, so they gained a following really quick. It was
That's
wild
true.
to watch.
that's true. I always and then now there's Tayshia. It feels like forever ago.
We had a lot of bachelorettes off of our season. Now that I think about it, we had Hannah B. and then Tayshia.
Yeah, more than one Bachelorette
Yeah.
from your season.
Dang.
I forgot that Tayshia was on Colton's. I always forget that. And then I remember their weird overnight date, and it all comes flooding back.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't get to that point. Hindsight's 2020, isn't it?
And that is when, like, I mean, you will then, we loved you from everything, but forever be remembered for that exit. And I got to tell you, nothing gets me more excited on the show when someone self-eliminates, because it's like, no, I'm aware of what's going on. And it's just,
Can we get
A
a
lot.
refresher on what went down that season? Because even when we were talking about it this morning, I was like, this feels like such a dream that I remember seeing. Like, can you give us a little recap of what kind of people saw from your time on the show?
Well, I think people were introduced to me on our one-on-one date, where we had all the kids at the park,
Yes.
and we had shut down some little rinky-dink San Diego amusement park.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was rides, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then we had the drum roll, please, surprise concert.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, the day's over. And I genuinely believed the day was over. And I think even in the episode, he's like, I have one more surprise for you. And that's when it clicked. I'm like, oh, no. And they aired me saying like, oh, no,
Yeah,
no, please,
yeah.
no. And then they opened the door to like 400 people screaming your name, which they must have told them in advance.
Yeah, no, that is such a trippy thing too, right? Because like they don't know of you yet, and then there's people screaming for you.
We had my first like group date was a public date where we did like our first with Megan Mullally and Nick Offerman,
Yes. Oh my God.
which I think I was the only person on that date that knew who either of those people were.
No, wait, are you serious? That would have been I would have been like the two of them are like, okay, this is where I'm starstruck. It doesn't happen often, but like Karen from Will and Grace and like Parks and Rec, like that's big times.
I was thrilled, but
Yeah.
everyone else was standing there like, yay.
They're like, who are these middle-aged to older people?
So we had that first public date, and then I had a very public date in the middle of San Diego, and then 400 people singing along to the same song on repeat. And then I left right before they left for Vietnam. So I left in Thailand.
Why did you leave again?
For a lot of reasons, but mainly we were coming up on hometowns, and my family did not want me to be on this show whatsoever. Just because they're incredibly private people. They live in Alaska and live their little life, and thought, worst case scenario, how are you going to be portrayed? Because they've watched, well, my dad didn't watch it, but my mom had seen the show before. And she was just scared. I think most parents would be. So for me to open up the world to seeing my parents and putting them in that situation, had they agreed, and we all know producers are very good at getting the families to agree most of the time, to expose them to something they didn't sign up for, it would have had to be someone that I felt I could actually have a relationship with outside of this. And I liked Colton, but I felt like I was more his confidant on this season than a romantic relationship.
Interesting.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if he would feel this way, but it was something that we had, like, before our helicopter flight, we had like an hour waiting for everything to be set up where we kind of got an opportunity to talk off camera. And throughout our date with the kids, because it meant so much to me, having gone through stuff with my sister and then him working with his charity and having a cousin that was ill, I think we bonded very quickly on an experience that seemed very outside of the show. Yes, it was over the top, right?
Yeah.
You don't go shut down amusement parks, but it allowed us to not really feel like we're on a romantic date. We both put ourselves aside a bit and just focused on these kids because their families were standing, you know, in the wings, if you want to call it that. And you could see how much joy it was bringing not only the kids, but their families to see these kids out of the hospital and acting like kids. And I think that's where I really started to like Colton. Was he, in that moment, didn't seem like a bachelor to me. He just seemed like a decent human that wanted to provide a really amazing day for these families. So after that, you know, some tequila shots, we made out a little bit. But it just, to me, it felt like a friendship. That we had connected on something that was personal, but, you know, not romantic.
Did you feel like he was going to take you to top 4?
I wouldn't have been surprised if I went to hometowns.
I remember watching it and us in our recap talking about it was like, I remember from our perspective, we were pretty locked in thinking that you were going to be in top 4.
I don't know. Who was even in top 4?
Hannah G, Tasha, Cassie, and oh no, it wasn't.
Hannah G, Cassie,
Tasha,
and then Kaylin. Yeah,
Yes,
because she
Kaylin,
went to
yes.
hometowns.
Yes,
she went to
yes,
hometowns.
So I don't know, and that might just be ego talking, but I think I was a safe bet that he could have eliminated after hometowns is kind of how I saw it.
Interesting.
And I would imagine, like, you know, you want to, even if like you're having stronger feelings towards a specific person, you want to have the person around who you feel comfortable talking
safe
to.
with.
Yeah. It's like, I always feel like that would be on the show, something that I'm like, I would do. If I was the lead, I'm bringing someone who I feel close to. And then after having the experience like you guys did, you know.
Yeah, it was just a lot of off-camera, not romantic moments, but just times where I could see him not as the lead that made him more of a person to me. So it took him off the pedestal, where I don't think I think it was kind of unfortunate because that world works a lot better when they are your sole focus, right? They're the only guy on the planet at that point. And I just kind of saw him as a guy that he also had to be someone I would want to be with. And I started thinking about it a little bit more analytically than that world allows.
Popping in for a quick chat, broads, listen. If you have ever worn high-waisted denim, stiletto heels, corseted tops, or worst of all, a super constricting bra, then you understand when I say the levels of discomfort we put our bodies through for the sake of looking a certain way is absolutely ridiculous and at times even comical. Well, Third Love believes that your body deserves to be supremely comfortable always, which is why they're designing underwear, loungewear, and activewear that are made to make you feel that way.
So I've been a huge fan of Third Love bras, and I have been for quite a while now. In fact, I've used them for all stages of pregnancy, nursing, and now motherhood. So they're equal parts sexy and comfortable, and believe it or not, it's the best bra shopping experience I've ever had, even though the whole thing is online. So Third Love's fitting room quiz is kind of like having your own personal shopper. You'll be asked questions to help determine the best fit and styles for you. And then Third Love will show you exactly what you're going to love. And Third Love even offers half-cup bra sizes and loungewear sizes, extra small through 3X. And I'm actually a half-cup size.
Okay, and if you're rolling your eyes thinking there is no way you're going to find a good fitting bra online, first of all, you're wrong. I was truly baffled. Best experience I've ever had buying a bra. Best fitting bra ever via online with Third Love. But if you don't believe us, that's okay. Third Love is so confident you'll love their product. You'll get a 60-day exchange or return, no questions asked.
Feeling is believing. Upgrade to everyday pieces that love your body as much as you do. And right now you can get 20% off your first order at thirdlove.com/chatty. That's 20% off at thirdlove.com/chatty.
So I'm 99.99% sure that I'm perfectly happy with the size of my family, but you know what they say, never say never. So even though I think I know what my future looks like, I still do everything I can to stay informed about my reproductive health, thanks to the help of Modern Fertility's at-home fertility test.
Seriously though, the phrase knowledge is power really applies when it comes to knowledge about your reproductive health. Because the more you know, the better equipped you are to make decisions for yourself and your family. And traditionally, getting this kind of information would mean going to your doctor and paying thousands of dollars. But now all it takes is a simple at-home test. With the quick prick of a finger, you can get access to the same information, just mail back the test with the prepaid label, and within 10 days, you'll get your personalized results. And also, you don't have to leave your house at all for this. That's the biggest thing for me, is not trying to find appointments and of course paying so much more.
You'll get insight into things like your hormone levels, how many eggs you have, and so many other important fertility factors. And if you want to go over your results after you get them, you'll get the chance to do that one-on-one with a fertility nurse while discussing your next steps and options. If you want kids someday, right now, or never, you need to be in the know about your reproductive rights, and Modern Fertility can help.
Right now, Modern Fertility is offering our listeners $20 off the test when you go to modernfertility.com/chatty. So that means your test will cost $139 instead of the several hundred or even $1,000+ it could cost at a doctor's office. So get $20 off your fertility test when you go to modernfertility.com/chatty. That's modernfertility.com/chatty.
The parents was a big part of it. Because like I said, I didn't want to expose them to something they weren't even comfortable with me doing in the first place. But I would be lying to you if I said if I was really into him, I would have taken that chance. There just wasn't enough between us.
When you left, did you feel like this was like the right call?
No, not at all. I was so confident the day I was leaving. I was handing out my clothes like I was having a garage sale in Thailand. I was like, Tasha, this dress will look great on you. Here's some eyelashes, Sydney.
What a gift. You're one of the girls. You're like, thank you so much. My clothes are getting limited now.
It was so like that.
For
it's so
sure.
like that on the show, and people, it's or when someone didn't bring their suitcase, and it was just kind of like, Lord of the Flies, where we're like, well, I mean, we would get it all back to her, or like someone would let someone borrow their dress, and then they would get sent home that night, and then you have the dress, and you're like, oh, I got to ship this back to Chelsea or whatever.
Right.
But
I'd be like, sorry, as soon as you leave, they're all getting put on.
No, I was so confident going into it, but I think what ended up hitting me the hardest, and you saw me boo-hooing my eyes out when I left and going, I'm so stupid, and being all down on myself. I think there was genuine surprise. Obviously, he had cameras in his room. He knew something was happening. But because I saw him as a friend, I felt like I had crushed his ego a little bit in this process, and I hated it. And then when he was saying things like, I think we have this, when I was saying, like, I don't really see it. And he's going, no, but when it's us, it's just you and me, and we have that. And I'm going, oh, okay, maybe I'm reading this wrong.
Right.
And like I said, hindsight's 20/20. I don't think he had romantic feelings for me either. But I felt like I had surprised a friend and potentially ruined his kind of ego going through a process that obviously is really difficult. All the leads are in a difficult position. And then I was right, because the girls started dropping like flies after I left.
Oh my God. No, it's so true. That's when all of a sudden he's like, you're gone. Demi, you're gone.
Well,
Everyone
I think
just started.
3 other girls self-eliminated on the season.
Oh my God.
I also think closeness is probably a lot of times confused with romantic connection, right? Like, especially in that process when you're being told all the time, like, these are women that you are auditioning for your wife. It's like, but I felt close to you. So aren't we, Aren't we a thing?
I just in real life wouldn't blindside a friend, and that's what I felt like I was doing. And like taking the rug out from them, even if I didn't think I was going to be the final pick, it still felt like I was shattering his confidence a bit going through this process.
Was there any producer pushback? Like, was anyone trying to convince you to stay or not?
No.
Oh, really?
I'm sure they were thrilled to see me leave. I was a tough cookie.
What do you mean?
I didn't always play by the rules. I got pretty good at passing notes. But because I was cast on a season of, quite frankly, like 22 and 23-year-olds, at 31, it was incredibly hard not to want to be protective of them. And I don't think that producers are out to get everybody. That's not my role or my view of the show whatsoever. But there were certainly times where I would off mic, stay up in my bathroom a little longer and pull one of the girls in and be like, do you really want to do this?
Yeah.
Do you really want to
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about this? For instance, like with Kaylin,
Right.
I knew she was going to share her story. It was something she had talked to me about, and I panicked. And I was like, well, you're going to be known for this. The whole millions of people are going to see this. Are you comfortable with that after this show is over? It's something, yes, you'd want to share in a relationship, but you have time off the show to share that.
Right.
So I think they were all applauding when I left because I ended up trying to produce the show myself when I was on
You're
it.
like, come here. Yeah. Sliding notes under the doors. Oh my God. I mean, that would be, in the situation, it'd be like, it would feel so impossible for me. It almost feels like prison at that point a little bit, where I'm just like, to know that something was coming. Because I'd want people to protect me too. I mean, I'd want to be like, hey, I want to let you know about this happening because I want someone to give me a heads up if I'm about to get, maybe share something that is producer motivated that maybe I don't want to ultimately.
Yeah, I was a little too involved with the girls in the house. But what do you expect when you cast me on a show where everyone is 10 years younger than me?
This is true. This is true. Oh my God, I remember that specific season. Then that was the narrative with
Cougars.
The Cougars. Yeah, it was the Cougars, and it was the Demi Tracy big beef, which is so funny that they're like best friends now.
Yeah, now she's styling her all the time.
Cracks me up.
That is so funny.
It's so good. It's so good. I wanted to ask you why did you go on the show? Like, were you a fan beforehand? Did you think it was going to be Colton?
I wanted it to be Jason desperately. Now, Colton is very fun to look at.
Yeah.
And I've told my dear friend Blake if it was him, there wasn't a chance in hell I was showing up because I did not want anything.
I forget Blake might have been cast for that Bachelor. That's who I thought they were going to cast.
Oh, I was really hoping it was Jason because I thought, Colton, I really enjoyed watching him because he just aesthetically looked like a lot of people I've dated in the past. Jason, intellectually, I thought I would connect with him a lot more. Was I sad it was Colton? No.
Yeah.
he was fun to kiss and fun to look at.
Yeah.
But I was a fan of the show. I'd watched it, but it was kind of serendipitous how it all happened. To this day, I don't know how I got on the show. I've asked even one of the casting producers when I went to an open call just to be there the year after I was on the show. And she was like, oh, I'll look. I'm sure we have it in your file. And I don't know. I got a call and I thought that I was being pranked. So I hung up.
Wait, what do you mean? I'm confused.
I got a phone call that said, hi, this is ABC. We're calling from The Bachelor, the whole rigmarole. And I hung up. I thought it was one of my girlfriends because I have a close group of girlfriends and we have a history of, pranking each other every once in a while.
Wait, so did you audition for the show or put in did someone submit you?
I have no idea.
So you just got a random call.
Yeah. And it wasn't until they followed up with an email and I thought, well, none of my friends are rich enough to buy the domain at abc.com or Disney or, whatever production company it
Having
is.
to dive into the website to be like, are we sure this isn't a bug?
Yeah, I did not believe that it was a thing.
Wait, so what did the email say?
Hi, we're following up again.
Yeah. Seeing if you're interested in being cast for the show.
Correct. Yep. And then it took about a month of kind of going back and forth in my own head of like, can I do this? And like I said, my parents really didn't want me to. But I had this sense of, funny enough, I have a tattoo 31. My sister passed at 31. And I said, when I turn 31, I'm going to take a year and just say yes. They called me like 2 weeks after I made that decision. So I went, okay, I guess I'm saying yes to this crazy adventure. But I wish I had a better story. I don't know how I got on the show.
Did you go through like producer interviews? Okay.
Yeah, I went through all the regular process after the call. I just don't know how the call was initiated.
The fact, that it wasn't like some sort of, I know that it happens with like a DM slide, like we'll reach out via Insta, but the fact that they had your phone number and that's the way that they reached out, like that is so wild.
Or even Will's got stopped on the street, like he was like on his lunch break. Someone was like, "Hey, do you want to be like on The Bachelor?"
Sure, that makes sense. I'm seeing someone like in person.
Yeah. Well, and I asked my girlfriends if they had nominated me, and then my only hunch is perhaps if it had turned out better, they might cop to it. But to this day, nobody has said that they nominated me. Did you have any
coworkers? Maybe like
no, because at the time I was freelancing, so I worked by myself. The only other idea in my head is as a makeup artist, maybe I worked with someone unknowingly that had worked on The Bachelor. But I have no idea.
How funny!
It was my say yes year, and then I said yes to the world's craziest blind date.
I mean, that in itself feels extremely serendipitous that you had the tattoo, that it happened to be on that year, that you get a cold call from ABC being like interested. Like, no, thank you.
And they knew your email too, so that's weird.
I don't have any clue, but I'm just not. At this point, I'm not going to ask. It was supposed to happen. I went on it, and I've made some great friends, and hell, you sure learn a lot about yourself.
So yeah, you just said if it had gone better, like maybe one of your friends would cop up to it. What do you mean, like if it had gone better?
Like if I had been the final one, they'd take credit and be like, I did that for you. They'd be like, I get to say like I set you two up in a roundabout way.
Right, at the wedding, just being like, this was me, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, instead they saw me walk out in a white dress in tears and went, don't tell her at all. We'll see. Maybe someday if I do get married, one of them will be like, so
that one time.
So did you regret being on the show at all?
No.
At any point? No.
I don't think it'd be honest to say at any point. I think anytime you get off the show, you have this weird period before it airs of anxiety, right? What's going to be shown? How is it going to look? At that point, yeah, there might have been moments of regret, but overall, no.
It's so funny that you were fully cold called, because the reason I wanted to know, and we were talking about this earlier when the three of us were just inside the house, I was always curious because as far as like influencing goes, like I'm just going to tell you from, again, someone who's never been compared to two girls who have. I go on the show, I want to get famous. And even though I'm not good at using an Instagram platform, this is why, like, I would go on for that reason, purely
I think
and simply.
anyone would be being dishonest if they said that wasn't a factor in it.
Okay. So I'm going on, I'm going to start making money. This is going to be the thing. And you, almost out of everyone, I think, Elyse just doesn't seem, and even on the show, I remember then watching you on a first date with Colton, I'm like, someone signed her up for this. This feels very Zach energy in Tayshia season. Like this feels very pure to me, so it all makes sense.
Well, you're giving me a little too much credit. I am a makeup artist, and when I got that call, I went, this could be great for my industry. And it was.
No, I was saying for sure. But there's the difference between like myself, who would be like, if I would have been single at any point, you best believe I would have been camping outside the offices where they were going to be doing in-person casting, being like, please get me on the show. But then, afterwards, because there hadn't been like a ton of Instagram presence, I wasn't ever sure too if it was like, oh, maybe this was tough.
No, I just don't know how interesting my life with my cat is all by herself in Scottsdale. Like, here's a palm tree.
Yeah.
Here's my cat doing cat things.
I do have to say the recaps, when you do the recaps on your Instagram, they're very entertaining.
Well,
I appreciate it. And I love when you and Blake do some overlap.
Yeah. How did you and Blake become friends?
So when he was on Paradise, I did my normal thing of getting way too worried about people, and I sent him a DM. So yes, I slid in Blake's DMs, but not in that manner. I was just like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And I said, "If you need a sounding board, yes, I know, Kaylin. I'm not here to talk about the situation, but just like mental health wise, are you okay?" And our friendship kind of formed from there. And then we met on the Bachelor Live on stage thing that they did. Their very first one was on Valentine's Day, and Blake and I were the guests in Scottsdale. So that was the first time we met, and we hit it off like crazy and just became really close. But I think it was because even though people saw us on stage, we purposefully kept our friendship quiet for almost a full year so that we could have a friendship without speculation. And I felt like he was in such a place that he couldn't trust the people in this world anymore.
Understandable.
So it was a conscious effort on my point to like, I'm not going to like his pictures. I'm not going to do any of these things. I don't want that internet speculation. I just want us to be friends. And it worked out because now he's one of my best friends.
Oh, that's so cool.
He just from afar, he's so fun. Blake will be coming on, I believe, next week or this week when this is dropping, potentially.
Yes. Well, we have already had it. No. We won't have already had him on. I was going to say,
No, I don't think so. But no, he's
Still doing things in tandem.
I was going to say, I'm like the timing of it. No, but I mean, it makes sense because the second that I remember you guys were posting together, I remember seeing you post like 30 minutes later about the fact that you guys are not in a relationship because, of course, everyone assumes.
Yeah, he flew down for Christmas. He had some event he had to do, and he came because I wasn't able to go home for Christmas, and I was missing my family like we all were last year. So he flew down a couple days early, and I made him walk around town with, I don't know if y'all saw it, but a sweatshirt of his infamous face going, "On Bachelor in Paradise," and "All I want for Christmas is a DM slide from you." And I made him go around town wearing,
That's so cute.
wearing that his little Christmas sweatshirt with his face on it. And then, of course, then people wanted to know. But no, we're just friends.
Okay, broads, before we really get into this incredible conversation with Elyse, we are so grateful for her. We're going to take one more quick pause. It's fall. Broads, you know Becca and I love fall, partially because it's all about getting back into the routine of things and fresh starts. And I don't know if you're like me, summer was mostly full of late nights, aka staying up until 4 a.m, binge watching new TV shows or just stressing out. Just me? Well, body wasn't happy about it. Sure wasn't, but that's okay. That's okay. Now I'm ready to reel it back in, take care of me. And step one of that is getting my supplement routine back in order with Care Of.
So what's really great about Care Of, and something I've loved about using them for years now, is they make it so freaking easy to take care of yourself. So literally the only thing you need to do is log on and take their 5-minute quiz, which it'll ask you all kinds of questions about your diet, your current lifestyle, your health concerns, your long-term health goals. And then Care Of takes your answers and creates a specially tailored program to meet your unique needs. And the daily supplements even come in little individual packets, which are great for travel or storing in your purse or car so you never forget to take them. And they're compostable. And there's instructions on their website on how to compost them.
I think by far the coolest part, though, is the transparency. I cannot begin to tell you all how many times I've wandered through vitamin stores, looking at bottles, wondering what the heck I was looking at and if any of it was any good. Care Of is so detailed in explaining what they're recommending to you and why. They take away all the guessing games.
For 50% off your first Care Of order, go to takecareof.com and enter code CHATTY50. That's code CHATTY50 at takecareof.com for 50% off your first Care Of order.
Broads, have you ever had a dream where you won something incredible, like a brand new car or doing karaoke with your favorite celebrity? Well, then I suggest you check out Omaze.
Oh, Omaze is actually better than any normal sweepstakes, but because not only can you win some seriously spectacular prizes, but you also get to raise money for nonprofits at the same time. And these are not your standard sweepstakes prizes, okay? One of the prizes up for grabs is a Miami dream house right now.
So here's how it works. Just go to omaze.com/chatty and select whatever prize catches your eye. For me, it would be that Miami dream house. Then choose a donation amount from $10 to $150. And the more you donate, the more entries you'll get and the more chances you'll have to win. But you'll also be able to help some amazing organizations. So far, Omaze has been able to raise more than $150 million and support over 350 nonprofits around the world.
Enter today for your chance to win the Miami Dream House or other life-changing prizes and experiences at omaze.com/chatty. Plus, you can receive 20 extra entries when you enter code CHATTY. That's OMAZE.com/chatty.
I feel like in this space, I've seen a lot of moments where you seem to be a comforting presence for people in Bachelor Nation. I know in conversation, speaking of Colton, when you went on Almost Famous and you had a conversation with Ben, like that was a really powerful episode. Not only because of your vulnerability, also educating, I think, on a topic that I know for myself, like I needed to hear aspects about that for sure. But then also you being there for Ben and having these, being willing to have these conversations. And so you and we started like DMing, just kind of like back and forth, like, hey, how are you doing? Like when certain dramas would arise in Bachelor Nation. So you've been that for me at certain times when I'm like, I don't know what's quite going on. And one of the things that you and I had spoken about was talking about the topic of grief. And I know, you made mention about your family being private, and then 31 being the year of your sister's passing. And throughout like our time on Chatty Broads, we've had a lot of people reach out about wanting to talk about the subject of grief. And you've been really vulnerable about that. And I don't know, I just wanted to, when we were chatting a while ago, and you were so graciously willing to come on and kind of get into that conversation, I was very grateful because, I think it's not something that we've really gone into super heavily on this, which obviously affects everyone. Yeah.
And I appreciate having the opportunity to talk about it because I think it's one of those things that it's a part of life, yet it is so uncomfortable in our culture, at least. Other cultures talk about and even celebrate it. And we just don't because we never know what to say. So to have a space just to be honest about how badly I failed at the grief process and the mistakes I've learned along the way, but also the beauty that can come through losing someone that you love and the lessons that I've learned and the changes it has made in my life have been instrumental. I mean, I don't say this lightly. You brought up Ben's podcast, and I talked pretty briefly about my experience of an abusive relationship. But when I say that through my sister's passing, she saved my life, I do not mean that in a very like frivolous way. If I had stayed in that relationship that was at the time emotionally and borderline physically abusive, seeing what happened after I left and how things escalated, there's no doubt in my mind, had I stayed in that relationship, that one or both of us would have ended up hurt or worse. And if I'm being really candid, my sense of self would have been broken enough that I don't know if I would have recovered from it. So through watching my sister get sick, and watching her husband take care of her, and watching how my dad interacted with my mom and just as a presence for our family as a whole. The night that she was diagnosed, we were all kind of waiting by our phones. And my fiance at the time, because the attention wasn't on him, and Lord knows the attention needed to be on him, he caused a big argument, caused a scene, and wanted to go out and left me there to wait by the phone to find out if my pregnant sister had cancer or not. And it was kind of in that moment that it was the aha of, this is unhealthy, because you're so trained to believe that this is normal by abusers, or that you deserve this, or whatever the narrative is, that it was seeing such beautiful examples of partnership in such a tangible way that I realized I'd never want to experience life where if I'm facing something like this, I'm alone. And it was the catalyst to end that relationship. And then through her passing, it was the same thing of watching these beautiful examples of showing up for your partner, but just unquestionably being there. There was not a hesitation or a complaint. And that's what I think we're all hoping for, but get often distracted by the, especially in your 20s, the shiny or bad boys or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So there has been really beautiful moments that have come from grief, because I don't think I would be here to sit and talk with you guys if I had not had her example, my father's example of that it was time to leave that relationship.
Yeah, it's always been interesting to me when you're talking about kind of like our culture and how we don't allow for grief. And, Becca, you've brought this up on numerous occasions about how grief is not linear, and like our culture seems to force it to be that way. You mentioned that you felt like you made some mistakes in the grief process. Are you comfortable sharing those?
Absolutely. I think our culture has this idea that you are supposed to pull yourself up from the bootstraps and keep going at all costs, right? Those messages are everywhere. I mean, remember those "keep on keeping on" t-shirts? Well, I prided myself and would tell people I did the right thing. I took a week off. I was selfish. I called it my selfish week. My sister died 2 days prior. I'd been with her for the 2 or 3 weeks prior to that, leading up to her passing. And I thought it was selfish to take just 1 week of rest. 1 week for however old I was at the time, 24 years of knowing a person. And that was all I allowed myself. But I actually took pride in the fact that I took time. Everyone else went back to work. I took time to be selfish and lay in bed. A week? And I think that we also have this idea that we have to be so independent, when yet humans by nature are created to be these social creatures. We lean on each other, but yet at least in our culture, in grief, you're often left to do it alone. And there's even, I've felt personally, and I don't know about you, but I felt shame if it wasn't done in a certain timeline. If a year later I cried because a smell reminded me of her, which, man, smells, those will do it to you.
Yeah.
If I broke down, I didn't feel like I could share that with everyone, because I felt, even if this is not how other people felt, I've portrayed it to be, I should be done with this step by now. Because whoever made up that 5-step thing, that's bullshit. Yes, there's 5 stages to grief, but you're going to go back to step 1 and then to step 4 and then back to 1 for years. Grief, like you said, is nonlinear. It's a constant, I don't want to call it a constant battle, but it's just a tricky little bastard that sneaks up on you when you think you're doing great. But I think we live in a space that just does not allow for a community to come in and like support people.
Yeah, and I think it's really scary and unapproachable. And I also think there's a lot of like misconceptions about what grief is. And I think fortunately, and sometimes unfortunately, not everyone, I don't know, maybe I think of it differently than other people, but grief is like a very particular thing. It's like not a depressive period. It's like fortunately not everyone, I think, does experience grief in their lifetime. And it can be very confusing for people, especially if you know, when you're talking about not fitting the timeline, also not fitting the narrative. Like I was literally just talking to someone about this yesterday, about how I remember my family and I like laughing, you know, or joking the day that like the thing happened that night. And like how I just brought it up yesterday to someone. I don't know if you guys remember the Sandy Hook shooting. And how people thought that the one guy was a crisis actor,
Right.
the one parent. And one of the main pieces of evidence was that there was a video of him where he was smiling and chatting with someone, and then he turned and people were like, it was like a switch. It was like he was acting, all of a sudden he switched to being sad. And I was like, well, then you probably just don't know what it fucking feels like, actually. And lucky for you, you don't know what it's like, you know, to be in grief. Because if you've actually been in a situation where you're grieving, you can actually be like really happy and elated like one moment. And really, you can even be like thinking about that person that you lost. And you can be like really happy and be enjoying that moment. And within the exact same experience, you can be hit like a ton of bricks. And I totally agree with the timeline thing where, what year did your sister pass?
2013.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So my family member passed in 2012, and now almost 10 years later, I even have recently had where I've been in like a family event, and something during that family event has sort of triggered me, and where I want to like break down and sob in that minute. And I'm even embarrassed around my family who has experienced the exact same loss that I have, and yet I'm still like, also sometimes you just don't want to go there.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the people around you. You're just like, I want to fucking enjoy this party right now. I don't want to cry and be held right now.
No,
you know?
and I get it. To make you feel less weird, my other sister, and I drank wine when we got home, and we laughed our asses off talking about childhood memories. And I won't speak for her, but for myself, I don't know if the grief part had started or if the relief of watching someone who was sick went. And so in that moment, I could laugh and talk about, I mean, plus we were real tired. We'd been up a lot of hours.
And you're so emotionally exhausted where you're like on emotional fumes too. Like,
And so we did. We laughed, and I would say that night was beautiful in the sense that we were actually celebrating. And the next morning we needed to go into work mode. We couldn't grieve yet. We needed to put together, you know, do all the stuff that you got to do.
Call people, like, yeah.
But I think that to go back to like the isolating feeling of grief, is people don't talk about what to expect very often or how to even approach other people that are grieving. And I know from my experience, I talked about hinted at some of the mistakes I made. I coped, and I didn't realize till later, now through like therapy and stuff, that I was coming off of an abusive relationship and then 2 years later losing my sister. I hadn't dealt with one trauma and another one came right down that, pipeline, which is how life works, right? And I was coping. Did I ever have like a drinking problem? Hell yeah. I can say it. Was I ever an addict? No. But did I drink more often just to get by? Absolutely. And it all came to a head when I made a horrible decision to get behind the wheel of a vehicle when I am adamant that no one ever drives drunk. And to sit in a cell, and this was kind of my moment of realization, because I had never been in trouble before. I cry when I go to the principal's office. But to sit in that cell and go, I'm so hurting right now that I was willing to do something that would cause another family potentially to experience what I'm feeling. How disgusting is that? And then a few days later, the forgiveness for myself came, because I went, okay, there's something deeper going on here, because if I'm acting in a way that is so against just my moral code, then what am I trying to run away from? And that's when the real grieving began. When I put down coping mechanisms, when I started talking to people that had experienced the same thing, when I admitted even the things that through grief aren't fun to admit. Like there's times that I was pissed at my sister for dying. That's not a fun thing to say. Because, right, we romanticize the people after they're gone, and it's not fun to express feelings that don't fit the idea of what we think grief should look like, where you just are sad or have these happy memories. The truth is there's a whole plethora of feelings that feel very uncomfortable to feel, but I couldn't run from them anymore. This wasn't, my sister didn't do anything wrong, right? She had cancer. But that didn't take the anger away of wanting to call my sister if, I had boy troubles and I couldn't do it anymore. I was pissed. And instead of reaching out, like I hope people do, to a therapist or group therapy or just to a friend that's gone through the same thing, I hid from all of it. But yet on the outside, people would have thought I probably was doing pretty great.
I know personally for myself, it's interesting when you're talking about like this dynamic of like grief being something that is different from depression, from heartache and all that. And I've experienced the loss of a loved one, but it hasn't come other than, old age. And it wasn't something surprising. So there was a certain level of grief, but not, I believe, not to diminish anyone's pain, but the type of grief that you guys both have experienced. And I remember Evan and I used to like sing, because we were working in a church for a while, and we would sing at funerals. And I remember we'd be like in the green room in the back waiting to go up, and there would be the whole family would come and they'd sit in the back room with us. And for a while we were doing this like every other week.
Jeez, that's a lot.
It got to a point where it was like, I'm like, I need to like take a step away. But it was so, I didn't have a lot of friends even personally who had experienced like that level of grief. So for me, it was so interesting to be in a room with people and see every single member of the family handling it completely differently.
Totally.
It was,
even though they're experiencing the loss of the same person.
Exactly. And like what you were saying, where it's like people are saying, oh, things, you turn it on, you turn it off. Like as someone who hadn't personally experienced that level of grief before that, I would have felt, similarly, when you don't know, you're kind of like, well, they seem fine. And why are you able to all of a sudden laugh after, whatever. But I remember watching everyone in the room, and you'd have a mother who's smiling and making sure everyone's doing well and like engaging with me, even though she doesn't know me. I'm just like a hired, whoever. And then a brother who was angry, someone who was bawling, someone who was acting like nothing was going on. I mean, it was just like such a testament to the fact that it's such an active, moving thing that is so different for everyone. I know for myself, because I hadn't experienced it, I can get uncomfortable with knowing how to be someone supporting someone else who's grieving. I'm curious, like, are there any like suggestions as people who have gone through that type of grief? I never know if it's, you're like, I don't want to bother, but I also don't want to.
Yeah, well, I have one in particular, and this is what my mom always said. Almost anything is better than nothing. And there will always be people who will, I don't know if they're thinking like, oh, I don't want to bother, or, I'm unsure how to approach the situation. But unfortunately, like, I remember some of my family members like lost relationships with people because they were people who had been in our lives for years who didn't say anything, who didn't even like, not even a text or a call. It was just kind of like, ooh, I'll wait till like this, passes over. Yeah. And it's like, no, dude, you need it. Even if it's just like, I am here for you. I can't imagine what you're going through. I love you so much. Like, that is so much better than silence, And I would say more often than not, though, if people are reaching out, the mistake that's sometimes made is just saying like way too damn much when all you have to say is like, I love you. Not like, oh, I remember when my grandma died, or like whatever, It's like, okay, just say I love you and you're here for me.
The cliches and platitudes. I remember I lost my cool on someone because they did that. Everything has a purpose and a reason. Yeah. And it's like, Art lady, excuse me. Please tell me what that reason is. Yeah. I would love to know it. And, the face goes blank. It's like, oh, I didn't have a follow-up. I didn't read the inside of the Hallmark card. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think the best advice I can give is be honest. If you don't know what to say because you haven't experienced it, just create a safe space to say, listen, I don't know what you need right now. I don't know how to help you through this. I've never gone through this myself, but I'm here in whatever capacity you need me to be, whenever you need me to be. I love you. That's enough. I think people want to fill empty space with words a lot of times when there's silence. And sometimes all someone needs is to sit in silence with somebody and just feel like they're not alone in it. And that might be your purpose. But we all have different relationships that we need, different things from different people. And just ask, what is it what role do you need me in this moment for you? And they can answer. They might say, make me dinner, or they might say, get me in a shower because I haven't been able to bathe today. Force me to, answer a call. Help me write thank you notes. Let them tell you what they need. And then check in again if you don't hear from them.
I also think like some of the most cliche things, like just sending someone flowers or texting them like, hey, do you need a meal this evening? I would love to drive one over. Like those are very like cliche gestures, but for a reason. I think that they are a very quiet way of demonstrating to someone that you're showing up for them, even if because there are a lot of relationships where you're not going to be there in their house, like holding them or whatever, but even just from afar, just some, and a quiet acknowledgement of I see you, whether through a meal or flowers or a card, a thoughtful handwritten note dropped off.
Well, I know, I was in Alaska, so it's a little bit isolated, but if you're in a more urban area, even just not even reach out to the person who's experiencing right away. But if you have mutual friends, do some planning so that they don't have to get like Uber Eats gift cards or something where they don't have to think of the mundane tasks that might seem absolutely crippling right afterwards. Yeah. So like you said, it can be a small gesture that means a lot. But if you are really close to someone, silence is not an option if you want to maintain that friendship, at least in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely.
What are your thoughts like, when you're having an interaction, like these are very like personal, like help me questions, because I've always really struggled with in situations where it's like, I want the person to know that I'm there and we're like face to face. And that's my own, at the end of the day, it's my own selfishness because like, I'm like, I feel uncomfortable that you're uncomfortable and even though I love you, like I don't like the feeling that I can't control this discomfort or this tension. Right. So like, I'm thinking, like when it's like in person, face to face, like, again, it's personally for me, like at someone's funeral or something, like I'm always, I just wonder, and I'm always kind of at a loss knowing what to say. Like, I guess, you said it where it's like, you said it's simple. Is there anything that I can, or it's simple. I'm sorry. Is there anything that I can do for you?
I also know some people hate I'm sorry. I have a friend in particular where when she talks about her sister passing, she's like, I don't want to hear your fucking condolences, she's like, it's so triggering for me. I don't think that can always be avoided, but I think even just something very personal to that person, especially if you knew the person that they lost. I don't know how you feel about this, but something that always meant the world to me is someone sharing a simple memory of that person. Be like, you know what? I will never forget when this person did this for me, or like the way that they smiled when they all of like, I feel like when you lose someone, or at least how I felt, and I know how a lot of my family felt, is like, you want to feel like they're still there, even years later, even 10, 15, 20 years later, you want to feel like, because as time passes, memories are fading, and when that person felt so tangible right after you lose them, where you feel like they could call your phone at any minute, that is so like fresh, which in some ways, right after you've lost someone, it's sometimes doesn't hurt that much because it's very surreal, especially if it's sudden. You're like, oh, I'm waiting for them to text me. I'll see them for Christmas. Like you're sort of in this like la la land, especially with a sudden loss. And so years down the road, you want to feel as your memories are fading and slipping, and this tangible sense of them seems to be getting more and more distant, you want to feel like other people aren't forgetting them. I feel like for someone to show that they're not forgetting that person you love is really, really meaningful for me. But if you don't know them, I think even just something personal to them of like, even encouragement to that person, like, I love you so much and I want you to know how much you mean in my life because X. It doesn't even have to be about their grief. It can be about how much you love them, that person that's right in front of you.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Again, it's just so tricky because everyone, like you said, your friend was upset if people said sorry because maybe she took it as like pity and sympathy or like I got mad when people said I understand. Oof. And I'd go, no. Oh, you do? Right. And maybe they actually did, but I didn't. I just couldn't comprehend that anyone could understand what I was feeling. So I think it's going to be nuanced to that person. But here's the thing. Just do something. I'd rather be, at least for me, I'd rather know you care and be a little piffed about how you said something than you say nothing at all.
Yeah, that's not going to stick with you in the long run, right? Even if someone says something wrong, you're not going to hold that against them 5 years ago. No. You may if they never said anything at all and never showed up.
Yep, absolutely.
That makes perfect sense. I guess like seeing these like behind the scenes funeral situations for a long time, like I would just see a lot of people come in and it was always because it was under like, you know, the church. It was the people would come in and it would always be like, this is part of God's plan. Oh, this is part of God's plan.
Makes me sweat.
And that would just be like mind boggling, being like, how, but I know it's just a lot of training from people. This is like what they feel like they should say.
Also, some of it is helpful in the moment when someone's like, you'll see them again. And in that moment when you're so like, all over the place, you're like, yes, thank you.
Right. And it would be, and I would see it would look different for different people. Like sometimes someone would say that and it would really connect with someone. And sometimes you could just see like the rage, like boiling up. Yeah. And then also even just people saying, you'd watch person come in after person, it would just be like, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. And maybe this is my pessimist speaking, but I remember kind of watching and being like, what does that do for the person? But I suppose for some people it is a connection. For me, I'm going praying to like what? So for me that would have been like, well, do something or tell me that you love me. Don't just say you're praying for me, like grieve with me. I don't know.
I think someone saying though, I've really been thinking of you and like you've been on my mind, which is maybe the non-religious version of that, is a kind neutral thing to say if you have nothing else. You've been on my mind. Yeah. You know, like I've been thinking of you.
That again, it's a personal thing probably where it's like if I heard that I'd be like, I appreciate that. But the prayer thing and I'm just like, are you really?
Well, yeah. Yeah. And there's some people who say that and they mean it and you're like, thank you. And then there's other people who are like, you're not fucking like, praying for me. Shut up. Yeah. This is the first time you thought of me in the past week.
Exactly.
Fuck off.
Exactly. It's like a greeting. Like it's like a goodbye, you know?
And I think there's no perfect right answer. It's not fill in the blank here. You have to figure out what your relationship is either to the person that's grieving or to the person that has been, like you said, who has passed away and adjust accordingly.
Also keep showing up. So you might have the one thing and you might say the wrong thing. Well, guess what? 3 weeks later, no one's going to be fucking checking in on you. So 2 months later, 3 months later, 10 months later. And they say sometimes that loss, especially like quicker loss, it doesn't set in until 10 to 15 months later is like the estimate. Yep. And that's when it becomes real, when you realize they're not going to call and they're not going to be at your, holidays or whatever. And that's when everyone's kind of like, yeah, they passed away a year ago. It's like,
yeah, and people expect you to, that's that timeline thing. And people, they're like, okay, well, she's grieved. She's good. And I tell you, holidays are a sad time for a lot of people. And a lot of that has to do with loss. Because those are, childhood memories for a lot of people. And that person is noticeably absent. So like you said, that after a year, at least for me, it was about 2 years where I went, oh shit, this is real. Because I didn't live at home, she wasn't a constant presence that I saw all the time. Yeah. I mean, I lived in North Dakota at the time. She was up in Alaska. So I didn't feel her physical absence. Yep. But it was, why aren't I getting a birthday call? And like I said, getting mad. Like, Sarah, you didn't call. I wrote her a text. I think it was a year later. Like, thanks for the phone call. Oh, after you push send and then it hits you. So it's a wild ride. But there's a lot of, I don't know if your experience, but I know you both talked in the past about growing up in a church situation, as did I. But it was kind of at that point where, like I said, I knew I needed to make some changes in how I was handling grief. And I don't like to put like a little rubber bow on it, or rubber. Who is a rubber bow? Don't kink shame.
Yeah, I was gonna say cute.
A ribbon on everything and make it like shiny and comfortable for everyone. That's why I wanted to be honest about like, hey, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But I was sitting in a church service after I'd moved to Scottsdale and kind of sorted out and faced, my grief and some of the stuff from my past in a little bit healthier way. And a pastor shared a story that still kind of resonates with me, where he was talking about he was a soccer star and he was all set to get this scholarship to go on to play college. And right as the recruiter was coming, he had a blowout of his knee. He could never play again to the level that he wanted to. And in that moment, all of his dreams and hopes for the future were changed. And he really questioned, like, why did this happen to me? And whether you're religious or not, the why God, why this? And it wasn't until his daughter had almost the identical injury where he could actually sit with her and say, I actually understand you, that it gave that pain purpose. So I never have asked, why did my sister die? Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to my family? It's what beauty can come from this? Like, how can I take this pain and turn it into service in some way? Her staff did a beautiful thing with the charity, but for me, it's given me an opportunity. And I mean, one of the biggest, and this sounds so cliche, but one of the biggest blessings in my life is I know that if I become a mother, I can be that for my child if they experience loss. Or I had a friend whose mother had a very similar cancer, and she invited me to be there through the passing to kind of walk her through it. I mean, that's a huge honor to be a part of someone's actual death experience, and in the room and things like that. So there's comfort that like your pain can bring to other people if you're willing to talk about it. Because there's not many times that you can sit with someone and just be seen so clearly of what's going on with how they're feeling inside until you experience it yourself.
I think you're also a testament to yourself that like I survived, I made it through that. And it's sometimes a little disquieting because there's a knowledge that you might go through that kind of pain again. But then there also is like, well, if I go through that again, I know, God forbid, if I lose my child, my partner, anyone in my life, I do know I'll make it, and that there will be like a day that I will feel okay, even if it's few and far between. That
You'll get there.
Gonna make it through.
It's like your first heartbreak.
Yeah.
No one thinks they survived their like junior high school, first love, if you want to call it love.
Yeah.
You are like,
I'll never love again.
No, yeah.
We talked about the before in episodes. I'll never love again.
Yeah.
And then with each heartbreak, you go, I'll be fine. I'm going to hurt for a little bit, but I'll get through this. And I think it's unfortunately the same way because loss is just part of
life,
circle of life. But I would really just encourage people to talk about it more, even though it's uncomfortable, and don't keep people around you that can, yes, support you, but also hold you accountable when you're not dealing with it in very healthy ways. I know our family kind of had an open discussion of hey, the next day, if I see you slipping, I'm on your door. Now, it's a little harder for them to see me slipping because I was in North Dakota. But have people that hold you accountable if you are falling into, there's a difference between grief and unhealthy coping skills, and there's also unhealthy grief that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. If you're not able to get out of bed for the first few weeks, sure. If that's carrying on to a point where you're losing work or things like that, you need someone to tell you, all right, we need to get you some help if you can't ask for yourself. But I just want people to be more of a maybe it's wishful thinking, but we are built to be a tribe and lean on each other. And this is the one part of life that I think our culture gets horribly wrong.
I think also because we, you know, while it is one of the worst experiences in life, it also is a very human experience. And I think in our culture, in so many aspects of our culture, pain is a really, really bad thing we should avoid all the time in the United States. Pain is really, really bad. Discomfort is really, really bad. You don't want to feel those things, you know? And whether that's medication or coping mechanisms or ignoring things altogether, we are not a culture that likes feeling unpleasant things.
Avoid at all costs.
And I don't think we like facing our own mortality.
No. And that's, I think, a big part of grief is we are so disconnected from death. We are really disconnected from birth and death in our culture, I believe. We really try to put both those things, the entrance and exit of life, behind curtains.
Yeah, everything
Literally.
is behind.
Literally behind curtains.
No, truly. Like you were saying, just like in whether it be like a community or tribal or whatever, it is all happening right there. You're all living in community together, so you are seeing birth, you are seeing death, and when you're hiding them behind closed doors in this society, it's like Beck and I've been talking about it on the podcast. I've been having like massive anxiety recently about the idea that one day my life will end. And I think it's truly because, and I was thinking, and we were talking about this a little bit, that it has been something that I have, and everyone around me, like just been, you don't face the reality of it at all. It's like, it will never happen. It is never discussed. The second someone in your family says, oh, I want to talk to you about something with my will, the other person goes, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. Yeah. And it's all shut down. My grandma, who's now, you know, I think 93 or 94, and she's 93 or 94. Like the time is coming, and she wants to talk about leaving us. She wants to talk about it. Everyone in the family, oh no,
can't handle it.
And I'm like, but Nana wants to talk about this. It's part of her life experience right now. But no one wants to talk about it with her.
No, or you'll even have older family members who are ready to die, and everyone else are keeping them on all the medications and shit to keep them alive, when they're like, please just let me go.
Like, I did it. I'm done.
And we don't want to let go. We also don't want to, like, I just think it trickles down too, where when someone gets old and they can't take care of themselves, granted, we live in a certain kind of capitalistic society where we don't all have the privilege of being able to take care of people. But in so many other cultures, your parent is going to live with you until the day they die. And that means being confronted with death. The sense and sights and icky parts of someone's body decomposing while they're still alive. And that is not something we deal with in our culture. And also even dead bodies, like in lots of other cultures, the body will be in the house for 3 days. In the United States, the minute someone dies, call the ambulance right now. Their body is decomposing. Their body is going to start smelling. Like, we're so crazy about it because we just like don't want to deal with like any of it. It's like also we're taught that it's just like so scary and so gross and all those things.
It doesn't have to be, though.
No.
Because it's just a fact. You're going to die. Whatever religious affiliation you have or spiritual affiliation, that goes on afterwards, or whatever you believe, or you poof and you're gone. I don't care. But your physical body will die. I'm getting enough wrinkles. I know that I'm I'm going that way, except for the Botox. But
I was just like,
I'm cheating death with every injection.
Another way that I'm avoiding it. I'm just like, fill her up, baby.
Well, the booty's gone a little south too, so things are moving in that department. But I mean, we are dying. All of us in this room, all of us on this planet are dying, but yet we can't talk about it. But how do you start those conversations? In our family, I'll be honest, after my sister passed, it made it a lot easier to have those conversations. When I was home in the summer, my dad's like, okay, well, when I go, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about this idea? And I'm sitting there going, well, I don't really want to think about you passing away, but you're going to. And if it's on the normal timeline, it will probably be when I'm still here. So I'm going to sit in this and be uncomfortable and tell me what you want. But I think because we were privileged enough to have a significant amount of time with my sister before she passed away through that process, that those conversations started then while she was still alive. And now it's easy to replicate those, but we don't get that in normal day-to-day life here. Nobody talks about it.
I also think it's hard to prepare for grief because it looks so different in every person too, right?
I don't think you can prepare for grief.
No. Like, I don't know what I guess someone could say expect like the unexpected and allow yourself to just go with how you're feeling and
I think
let that happen.
There's a lot of patience that you need to have for yourself and forgiveness that you have to have for yourself through grief. And that's the only certainty that you have, is that it's going to not look the same day to day, that it will most likely sneak up on you at the most inopportune times. Maybe you're shopping at Home Goods and start bawling in the aisle. It's fine. Exit gracefully.
just a random example.
Hasn't happened to me when I was smelling a cinnamon candle. But it sneaks up on you. I know for a fact that if I ever get married, I'm going to have to do some of that grieving process again, because there will be somebody missing from how I pictured that experience to be. It's okay, but I have to allow myself the patience and forgiveness to say, like, I need to sit in this for a minute. And it's okay to just be sad. You'll be okay the next day. Just sit in it. We're just so uncomfortable.
We don't like being sad.
We don't like
even even my daughter Ruth, she's like, she's always like, if I'm appearing sad, she's like, "Are you okay, mommy?" And I'll be like, "No, whatever, I'm sad, whatever." And then she's like, "Here, mommy, let me make you happy. Like, do this. You happy now? Are you happy now? Are you happy now?" And I'm like, you are so American when you're doing this. No, but that's kind of how we are, like in our culture. We're like, "But are you happy now?"
No, it's a full song and dance.
But are you happy
to try
now?
to
Like, maybe you should take. Are you happy now? Are you happy now? I remember a friend was going through like a really serious loss, and I remember it was quite soon after. And granted, because we are in a society where we're expected to function in our jobs and school and whatever, regardless of what's going on, some of the times you do need like coping mechanisms to expedite the process. And sometimes like medication is really helpful and all that kind of thing. But I remember a friend who, her doctor prescribed her antidepressants, and I was like, dude, yeah, you're supposed to be sad right now. Like, you know that, right? And I remember we had a conversation and she was like, "Oh, kind of, yeah." But she was like, "But I feel so sad." I'm like, yeah, that's really normal. Why wouldn't it be weird if you were happy right now and like feeling good? I mean, it would be okay if you were, but this is life. Like, this is a part of life. And also I do believe that if you don't give yourself, like you're talking about, a chance to really feel things, that will come up a year later, 10 years later, 20 years later. That does not go away. You are not going to do not think you will be able to escape grief.
No, you know. I mean, I'll give this perspective. I called my dad, and honestly, every member of my family before coming onto this, to ask if there's anything they wouldn't be comfortable with me talking about. Just because I think it is such a personal experience that some things have to remain,
absolutely
private. And my dad told me the next day, he goes, "I had to pull over the side of the road and just got all that big old lump in my throat 8 years later just by hearing you talk about it." Just simply going, "Hey, Dad, is there anything you don't want to talk about?" And he goes, it just never stops, does it? I'm like, "No, but are you okay today?" "Yeah, I'm fine." He's like, "I just needed 15 minutes. Now I'm back on the road." But you can't just hide from it, because it is like that. What movie were you talking about earlier? Purge?
Yeah.
It'll find you.
Oh my God.
Maybe it'll look a little different, but
I know it's confusing for other people too, because I don't know what your experience was, but for me, even in days after, or, even now, there are times I can very matter-of-factly explain things to people. I remember being in school the week after and being, it's just, cut and dry, here's what happened, you know, but maybe for you, maybe my sister died of cancer. And it's like, sometimes you can say those things and it's just like, I don't feel a thing in my body when I say that at all.
I'll be honest, when I said the story on the show, when I was talking to Colton, that was such a rehearsed thing in my head because I had explained it so many times. This is the type of cancer she had. She was pregnant. This is what the doctors chose to do. She passed away 2 years later. Now we have a charity. I could have done that, you know, without even thinking about it because I had rehearsed it so much. Not to go on the show, but just in daily life.
Yeah.
Because it becomes part of your story as well. But I get it when I can rattle off all the scientific parts of her passing, but yet a smell in Home Goods is going to break me. I don't like Home Goods all that much anymore.
Too much damn cinnamon.
Yep.
Ask your questions as I like doing your questions as the outsider
As the
looking
person
in.
who doesn't. I mean, yeah,
And I also hope that doesn't sound like, oh, like not everyone goes through, you know, not everyone has this experience and like, oh, I've been through like so much harder things.
When you said that, it was actually it's the way that you guys were both explaining it for me was actually very like impactful because when I have like conversations with friends who have experienced the type of grief that you both have, there is this part of like, oh, I know I've experienced like a lot of loss and there's been a lot of different struggles in my life over certain, you know, personal things. We've talked about numerous of them on the podcast, but that's a different space.
Yeah.
It is a different space. Again, not to like quantify different people's like grief, but I think that it is important, I think, in conversation to talk about because I think that there should be also an understanding of everyone should be able to grieve in whatever experience they need, but also an understanding truly from people who haven't been in that situation that there is a different level of empathy that needs to be extended. Because I think especially in our current day and age, it's like get back to it, work like you were saying, work right away, or even if it's like 2 years later, no one's checking in. For people who haven't experienced that specific type of grief, I think there needs to be a check-in and going, okay, I know I've experienced forms of loss that have affected me, but I've never experienced this form. I need to be actively aware that when I'm having a conversation with like a dear friend of mine and there is something that comes up, maybe an argument or something, that there needs to be grace extended.
I remember our my next door neighbors, their mom had died of cancer. She'd got cancer and died of cancer throughout the course of us living next door to each other. And I remember like thinking of it being like, oh, their mom died 2 years ago. Like I was a teenager too, but still when I would hear other people be like, oh, you know, my mom died of cancer 2 years ago, or, you know, my little brother died 7 years ago. I'm kind of like, kind of a long amount of time, right? Different than like 5 months ago. And then I think what's really unique about really like tragic loss, I don't know if that's the proper term because a lot of like expected.
Can I interrupt you just because I think that might be taken the wrong way because it's all tragic, right?
Yeah.
But
that's not the right word at all.
We don't talk about death and all that stuff like we just talked about. However, there is conscious awareness of my parents, if the timeline goes right, are probably going to die before me. My grandparents are going to die before them. There's expected losses that somehow you're already a little bit prepared and emotionally ready for.
Yeah.
Right.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe like, like some losses like more abnormal in circumstance.
Unexpected.
Yes.
Unexpected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like I'm saying, I've lost family members, but it was expected because they were very old and they got sick and it was extremely difficult, and it's still, you know, it'll come up, but the unexpected piece is, I think, where then someone like myself or people who haven't experienced that, there needs to be a different understanding of like, okay, I can't look at you and say I understand.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I can't either. And that's the crazy thing about it too, is it's like I don't even know if I don't even know if I could look at my sister and say like, I understand. Because her experience was, you know, one of my family members, you know, is struggling from like PTSD from the experience, you know, and I don't think I am. And so I don't understand I don't understand.
But you can understand how that specific person was to you guys.
Yes.
In a family.
I can understand
I
how.
can call my sister, who grieved very differently than I did, but we can both share in the fact that we knew our sister. We knew what kind of person she was. We can talk about that. We know the same loss. We just experience it in different ways.
Maybe that's why it's so hard to hear someone say, I understand, like let's even just say like my sister died of cancer and I said, I understand. That even still might be hard to hear, especially when something's fresh. Cause like you're saying, like, no, you don't understand because you didn't know my sister. You know, it's like, no, you don't understand because
My sister was my sister, and your experience was your experience. Sure.
Right.
Grief is complicated, ladies.
No,
but yeah, those year things. Oh, what I was saying is, but then experiencing not something similar, but experiencing unexpected loss. I was like, oh, damn, like 7 years, you know, 7 years after my grandma passed, I still miss her. But 7 years later, it do not hit the same. Well, you know,
the trauma is quite different.
And it's not only that, but I think when you have that conscious awareness of, like we were talking about, your grandparents are probably going to go before you.
Yeah.
If things go in you know, as we
there
the order
is
that we
an evolutionary understanding of kind of what the order of things typically is.
But when you have a loss of someone that is like sudden, or they get sick and it doesn't follow that timeline, there's still points that they're supposed to be there. They're part of a life you've imagined for yourself. As sisters, I would expect that I would have kids if that was part of my plan, and they would have cousins, and that would be part of their involvement. And she'd be a great aunt, and I'm never gonna have that moment with her. There's points of my life that there will be someone noticeably absent that I never thought I would have to go through. And that's the difference. I expect that there will be parts of my life where my grandparents won't be there, or even my parents won't be there. But I never expected that she wouldn't be.
And it feels
I think
unfair.
That's the difference.
Right? It's like that was taken from me. Like I was supposed to have all this more time with this person. And that's always been something that's been difficult for me. It's like, this is not fair. I was supposed to have you for so many more years. And And
I'm not supposed to like outlive my sister in that capacity. Like I said, the 31
those
tattoo.
many years, yeah.
But that's where I think at least what's worked for me is not sitting in the why did this happen to me, or why did this happen to her, but what can be done from this. Because I got a lot of years left with her, or without her, more than I probably had with her. And how long am I going to sit in the space of trying to figure out a question I'll never have the answer to?
And also, like, I think that might be hard for some people, of like, especially if it's a little fresher, of like, I don't want to make meaning out of this.
Hell no. And I am 8 years removed, and this is how my brain is thinking now. I was not thinking these things when I was sitting in a jail cell and just trying to drink to not lash out on my friends who were doing everything right, but I just was angry at the time. So I was drinking to be a nice person, or at least a decent person. A lot of good that did me. But no, this isn't a conversation of like, okay, the day after they passed, how are we going to find purpose through the rest of your life? No. But this is just where I'm personally am at now, of I can't sit in that why, because that why was not a space that was healthy for me.
Yeah, and I was going to add on to that and say, and also like, how can I honor that person, right? It's like, what, like how can I make them proud? Like, and that's a very corny thing of like, oh, they're looking down above and watching me or whatever. But, thinking about like, what would they have been excited about me doing in life? And I think that that's a very comforting thing to think about.
You guys, I'm not joking. This sounds so silly, but we could all use a laugh right now. My sister loved The Bachelor. So when I went on there, I was like,
She would love this.
oh my God, she would be watching it and be posting all over Facebook. She would have loved it.
She would have been so proud to be like, that's my sister. And like, she's on TV and her friends are like,
oh
my God, your
she would have
sister.
been calling me, being like, tell me what's happening next week so I can like,
all the tea about the behind
and
the
there
scenes.
is just stupid stuff that like makes you, laugh about
Sometimes
it.
even if they're gonna make you, you'd make them mad. Sometimes I sit and think, I'm like, oh my God, my papa would have been so pissed about that. Like, that's so funny. Like, he would have hated that,
Oh, there was a time in my life where my sister, I mean, she was right, but she minded her P's and Q's pretty well. We all did to a certain degree in front of our parents, and she called me an asshole, and my parents didn't get mad at her. And it still to this day plays in my head when I do something wrong where she's like, you're being an asshole. I'm like, you're right. So yes, there is ways of living on. I mean, she has children, so that's, a big part of our family is making sure that we keep those memories around for them or talk about her. But I don't have all the answers when it comes to grief. I can just say it does get better. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily easier, but better.
Mm-hmm. Do you both feel like after the loss, do you feel like there's this, did it shift your perspective on living like your own self?
For me, no. Something I observed in my family was almost like a giving less of a shit, especially in the immediate years. Like, fuck it. I don't care what the fuck I eat. Like, I might get hit by a car tomorrow, and not in like a good sense of like, yo, let's make the most of it. But I saw it even as just like
morbid.
Why the fuck does it matter? Like, why does any of this matter? Why am I doing this? There was a lot of that feeling, I think, in the first few years, especially.
I don't think I had that like existential, like I'm going to live every day
Carpe
to the
diem.
most, and every life is going to be, or every day I'm going to do something that, she couldn't do. No. I mean, maybe I thought that for like one day and then I got exhausted. I went on a TV show, that's enough.
Yeah.
But I think I'm more aware of death.
Yeah.
And a little bit more comfortable talking about it, at least amongst my family, because we witnessed it together. But I don't think I have had this, not tattooing Carpe Diem on my forehead and going skydiving.
I think sometimes it feels even more confusing. I think for like when, older family members have passed, it's like that is death. And sometimes I even still think about my papa, who was my grandpa. He was 59 when he passed, though. And so there definitely was this sense of like, I thought you're going to be around for like the next 30 years. And I it sort of feels confusing even now when I think about it, is I'm like, wait, like he's gone, and like all that, those are the only years that I got with him, and like I don't get any more, and it's gonna be like that with my other family members, and it could even be like that tomorrow, and that would be all the time I would get left with my mom or whoever. Like that's very that's like very difficult, and it makes death sometimes feel much less clear. That is just my personal experience. I don't know what your experience is.
Same, but different. For instance, my mom is very religious. So I was almost jealous of her sense of certainty of exactly what was going to happen when she passed.
Yeah.
At a time where I was kind of figuring out outside of, the religion I grew up in, but like, what do I believe?
Yeah.
There was a jealousy there of a sense of like, for sure, I'm going to see my daughter in heaven. Just the peace that comes with that of like 100% faith in knowing that. I was incredibly jealous. My dad's on the other side, so I saw him going, I have no idea what's going to happen, but hope I see her. Yeah. But kind of allowing space for just, I don't have the answers. And it's confusing as all hell, because it makes you think about it a heck of a lot more. But I don't know. I don't know what happens after this. But I'd love to, I'd love if she came running up going, you asshole. Let's talk about that dress you left.
Is there something that you both feel like if yourself in that immediate moment of loss, if you could right now go back to that version of yourself, like what would be the one thing that you would would tell yourself?
Oh, that one got me choked up. To stop hiding. Because I think especially as women, we have a tendency to take care of and put our needs aside. And I became a very good chameleon at even calling like the other family members and how are you doing? And happy faces when I was drowning. So yeah, not to hide.
I think I'd probably just tell myself to be kinder. I think in that, I don't know, the first several months especially were really weird. And I was just like, and I was a teenager too, and I was 17, and my mom didn't care anymore where I was or what I was doing. So I was like, fuck yeah, like this is awesome. I'm going to hang with my friends all the time and do whatever I want. Because I just didn't know what, I was like, I don't know what else to do. So I think I would just tell myself to be kinder to the people around me and not be a selfish little bitch, and remember that everyone else is going through this, like not the same thing, but going through the same shit. And it's not just my little isolated island of experience, but that everyone was, I would tell myself everyone around you is trying right now and is like having a really hard time. So just like be nicer. Remember, you're not the only person experiencing this is probably what I would honestly tell myself.
It might look different, but everyone's just like treading water.
Yeah.
Like little ducks.
Trying to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under the surface, there's a lot of feet going, pitter patter.
Yeah.
When you're trying to maintain face for the rest of the world.
Totally.
So in honor of your sister, can we talk about her charity for a minute?
Yeah.
And like ways that people can maybe get involved and...
I would love that. So it was something that we didn't find out. This kind of came off a little differently on the show, so I just want to make it clear. I did not start it. My family did not start it. My sister worked in our local hospital in Alaska as a labor and delivery nurse. And when she got sick, people didn't know what to say, like we talked about here, so they just gave. And she was in a financial situation. She didn't need all of this stuff that was coming in. So she started putting together these little packages and would put them in the janitor's closet. And then every time she had a baby that, came in, she would send the mom home with a little gift.
Oh, that's really sweet.
And it was just really cool because it was something we found out after she had passed away. But as those little bags went away out of the janitor's closet, the other nursing staff, I think, wanted to step up and carry on that legacy for her. So it's called Sarah's Closet. And since it started, or I guess it really started with my sister, but since they've continued on, no child has gone home without something in the past 8 years.
Oh my goodness.
So whether it's, a blanket or something, or if it's a mother in need that needs like a breast pump or whatever the case may be, like bigger ticket items, those are available. So there can be donations of financial donations, but the biggest thing that they try to do is have something with like a personal touch. So I know there was a lady that watched the show and knitted 50 little tiny little baby hats and sent them up there, which is
so sweet.
Really, really sweet. So of course,
That's so
financial
sweet.
donations are great for larger ticket items that can't be gently used.
Yeah.
We know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Certain sanitary products and things. But otherwise, if you have a child that you're going to be giving away their baby clothes or blankets or anything of that nature, or you have some artistic talent for crafting that I don't also possess, they will help in making sure that those are given out to families in need.
That's
so cool.
So cool. That is so cool. Thank you for coming on and
Thanks for
talking
having
and
me.
being like so willing to go there with us. And thank you for being vulnerable as well. Be like,
Yeah, and I also want to apologize because sometimes I come off like angry or kind of harsh about this kind of thing, but I think that's part of grief too. Is some days I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that I've had to have this experience, and I wish that I didn't have experience to speak
have
on this
this
topic.
conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy to have the conversation. I just wish I didn't have to. Or I didn't know how to. How about that?
Wish I didn't have the life experience.
There will be
to
no
able
apologizing in this grief space. Okay.
Do you have any favorite resources, any books or anything that did help you along the way?
No.
No.
Therapy. I am not comfortable in group therapy all that much. It just wasn't for me. But just therapy and having a space that I knew was not connected to my sister, where I could share some of those thoughts or feelings that aren't pretty. Like I said, being angry or things that if I expressed to my parents, I didn't want to cause them more concern or whatever the case may be. So to have, we all need therapy. But I think for me, it provided a really good resource to have a private space where I wasn't going to be judged for how I was experiencing grief that day. Because, Lord, it looks different day to day.
Yeah.
Well, Elyse, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.
We so appreciate it.
Maybe next time you can come on the show and we can do a recap.
I know.
Yeah, let's break down the bad makeup looks for next season.
Oh my gosh. Let's do it. We should do oh my gosh.
I was going to say, we did recently do a fashion episode and we had a lot of fun with that.
Do you know what we should do? We should do
anything about
We should do
fashion.
like a Bachelor fashion episode and we can bring like some of our favorite looks, like makeup looks in the past couple seasons and some of our least favorite. God bless everyone.
I don't know crap about fashion. My dress night one was $5 from Goodwill and I just got it tailored and I loved it.
That's what we're talking about. The dress was beautiful and I was like all about that. It was so good. But then you can break down some of the makeup and the hair.
That I can do.
You can do this.
Just don't judge the one on our season because I did most of them.
Were you really? Were you back
yeah.
there like doing everybody's like...
It was my way to like break the anxiety. Makeup is therapy for me, so it was easy to just sit there and be like, I don't know you, but you're going to like me because I'm doing your hair and makeup.
Yeah.
Can't be the villain if you're the one making everyone feel good about themselves.
That is so true. Oh my God. No, if there was someone on a season I was on who could do makeup, it would just be like the first in line at like 2 p.m. before rose ceremony, like however long before I'd be like, please help me with all the lights.
Cian would do my lashes before every single night because I could, Lord knows I could not do the glue. So I would be there. I'd be like, Cian.
I was up there for hours. At the beginning, a couple weeks, the girls just brought me food up from downstairs, and I was like, next.
Oh my God, that's
But
awesome.
it was a little manipulative because I knew they had to like me then.
I mean, I'm all about
use your
using your
talents and
sources.
skills.
There you go. You can't talk crap about your hairdresser or makeup artist.
Using the sources. But no, we should definitely have you on for a fashion or a recap because like I was saying too, all of your takes whenever you do a recap on your Instagram, I very much enjoy. Where can the people find you, Elyse?
Well, about once a month, you can find me on Instagram at Elyse_Mua. Elyse Michelle Mua. See, I don't even know my own Instagram name. Oh, Lord. I'll get better.
ELYSE, right?
Yeah.
We'll make sure that it's right in the the episode notes. Oh, thank you so much, Elyse. And Broads will chat soon.
Chat soon.
Chat soon. I've always wanted to say that.